What's up everybody, this is Dropwise back with a tutorial video. Finally, been teasing it for a little while, but we're gonna do an LED tube build today. And this is the most recent iteration of the LED tube projects. I've done like a full DIY version of this before. And this is, and the DIY version is all with parts bought from the store, if for all intents and purposes for that project. This, on the other hand, is more of an upcycling project. This is something that you can do if you have access to some of these. This is a Philips LED fluorescent replacement tube. These are pretty common. You find them in workplaces, schools, and they go bad just like any other kind of bulb does. But these are really unique in that they are like a nice hard plastic, not as flimsy as the LED, or sorry, excuse me, these are not as flimsy as the fluorescent tube protector tubes that I used for the other LED tube build. So let's go ahead and tear this down. But first, I'm gonna get into just a quick little overview of the parts you need. You need a soldering iron, some solder, some resin, a little bit of electrical tape, a couple different sizes of small Phillips screwdriver. I've got one of these little, we call them tweakers in the industry. Little drill bit for your wire to pass through, and maybe like a little pocket knife or something, just in case. So first things first is you're going to take the tube apart, and it's super simple. Down in here, you're gonna have two little Phillips, one on each side. So there's, see if you can see that one, there's one in here, and then there's one on the other side. So take these out, don't lose the screws. You're gonna wanna hang on to them. So we'll go ahead and get that taken out first. And for this one, you're gonna wanna use the longer Phillips bit. Otherwise you won't be able to get down to, because these are in there pretty deep. And that's why I've got two different size screwdrivers here. So pretty simple to take these apart, just two screws. So I feel like I've got it. You just kind of tilt it on end, tap the screw out, there's one. Go ahead and do the second one. Sometimes they take a little bit of force. And with these little kind of like eyeglass screwdrivers, it's good to keep a pair of pliers or wire strippers on hand with some good teeth on them, in case you have to grab a hold of these edges on the screwdriver here to get the screw started on its way out.
Uh, 2 hours later.
So that one stayed inside this little plastic housing here, but it's gonna be easy enough. I'll just push it right back out. There it is. All right, so you may notice when you take these apart, there's gonna be some wires, some things that kind of break off. So when you take these tubes apart, there are like capacitors and things soldered in. You don't need them. Just break it, rip it out. And then you can remove the inside strip, which is a piece of aluminum bar, extruded aluminum, and then this little white plastic reflection material. You don't need that. You can throw that away. Just discard that. Both sides of that. Discard it. And then the LED strip pulls right out of this channel. Okay, so you've got your extruded aluminum piece. That's great. And you've got your tube. That's great. And you've got these two end caps. And you're gonna wanna save these, but importantly, at least for aesthetics purposes, you could use these for pins if you wanted to use them as like pass-through. I don't think it's necessary at all. I just break them off. Just give them a little wiggle and they'll come right off. And if you're real lucky, they'll come completely out. So most of the ones I've done so far have just kind of come come down to little nubs. You could drill these out too if you wanted to. I didn't feel like pulling my drill out of my vehicle, so this project is completely power tool free. You do not need power tools, aside from the soldering iron, if you want to count that. I won't blame you. Just get these out to the best of your ability. These little pins, you can cut them down if you want to. It's like I said, you can drill them out. I just have been breaking them off and pulling them out the best I can. That's that. Break that off. Pull out the wire and break the little nubbin off right here. All right. So, in summary, you should have 2 end cap pieces with the nubs broken off, your empty plastic tube here, and your aluminum extrusion flat bar and the screws. Don't forget to keep the screws. All right, here in just 1 second, we will go ahead and put the LED strip inside the extrusion. All right, so this is where I kind of come to a crossroads with LED projects. If you've ever done multiple LED projects, you know that the start of your roll, when it's brand new and it's fresh, it's gonna have this little pigtail on it. It's gonna have this little clip, and that's great, but it's bulky. It's got extra wires that I don't need, and I really don't need it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off, which I hate to do, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So to keep it clean, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut off the entire first LED. So I'll use my wire strippers for that. Go ahead and cut it at the first cut line right there, snip, and that's the end of that, and set that off to the side. So next thing you're gonna wanna do is get your LED strip laid into your aluminum extrusion. And I've done this enough times to know that they fit perfectly with the length of this aluminum. So what you can do is just lay it out from end to end, get your length, and there's my cut line. Hold that with my thumb. This is a very exact science we're doing here. All right, so I know that is the exact length of LEDs that I need, no more, no less. No overhang whatsoever, which is awesome. So let me get my workspace cleaned up a little bit, get these LEDs put away. So as I was, experimenting with this project, I was going through my stock of other older LEDs, and I came across a spool that I bought from Amazon, and it was very clearly a spool that someone had bought and returned to Amazon, but they had used it. And I know they had used it because the adhesive backing had been peeled off, the strip had been applied to some kind of wood, because when they peeled the LEDs off, their wood chips came with it. So I spent a lot of time kind of picking those wood splinters off and trying my best to get it to adhere to this aluminum bar. And what I ended up doing was using some Gorilla Glue, super glue to hold it down, and it's worked perfectly fine. But fortunately for this one, we're using a fresh roll, so we don't have to fuss with all of that. So I don't know if you can see here, but just peel the aluminum backing back down. This will fit right down into this center channel really nicely of this aluminum extrusion. And just try and keep it as straight as you can. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. It's got these really nice guides down in the aluminum that'll keep it straight for you. This has been such an exciting advancement, I'll say, in the LED project. This is a much higher quality version of the LED tubes that I've made and been using, those that were based on the Super Valid Designs YouTube channels, LED. And I'm so grateful for that project because it got me interested in LEDs. It made me feel confident enough to get into building things with them. And for years I thought, LEDs that's too much programming. I'm not a coder. I'm not interested in learning how to code. So I just always thought that they were kind of out of my league. But they're just not. There's so much good free open source software out there that is pretty much plug and play, more or less. But it's not going to require you to write extensive amounts of code for getting your LEDs working. WLED is a godsend. I love it, and we'll get into it a little bit later in the video, but getting it working with resolume has been a big game changer as well. And that's something that I've also figured out alongside with this project here. So if you're interested in the resolume portion of that, stay tuned. And even if you're not sure if you're interested, stay tuned. You might learn something or see something really cool. It might inspire you to try something of your own. So there's that. Boom. All right, so I do have a little tiny bit of overhang. I don't know if you can see that there. Just a little bit of an overcut. So you have the option to kind of offset it on both sides, which I may go ahead and do that, but for the sake of the video, I think I'm gonna just go ahead and run it as it is. So the cool thing about these end caps is that they have some wiggle room in them. So that's not gonna really cause me any real problems if I wanna run it that way. I'm just gonna have to, what I'll have to do is lift this tail end up a little bit, because down in here where that screw sets in that holds the end caps in the tubes, you can see that inside, it's gonna bump into it. So I'll actually just lift that up and that'll be fine. Cool. So now this is something that I've not seen enough people talk about. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit for this here. When you have a strip that you've cut the ends off of and you need to add a wire lead to it, how do you do that? Soldering these is not the easiest thing in the world. It's not super hard. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you've done it a couple times, it gets a lot easier. So first thing I'm gonna do is try to get like a little table level thing sort of set up here. Make my life a little bit easier. Yeah, so first things first is you have to have resin. You cannot get a good connection on these without it. So you're gonna want to take your I have a little tiny flathead screwdriver that I use to apply it. But you just want to get a little dab of resin on each one of these pads. Just a little bit. You don't want to soak it, but you want just enough to get this solder to bind to these pads. All right, so that's enough of that there. And then what I usually like to do next is get my wires tinned. So this is 22 gauge wire. This is originally a 4 conductor, but I've cut it down to 3, because I only need 3. And I'm gonna actually go ahead and cut it down just a little bit, because it's a little too long. So you want something about like that. And strip off less than you think on these ends here. About like that on each one of the ends. Because when you go to solder these, that jacket is gonna melt back a little bit. And if you already have it long, you're risking shorting something out even more so. So something about like that. I am not the authority on best soldering practices. I just know what I do and what works and doesn't work for me. I usually dip the wires in the resin, just get a little bit on there. And then we'll go ahead and kick on the soldering iron, let it get nice and hot. The first thing you want to do is tin your wires. So I'm gonna take my iron now that it's nice and hot, and I get just a little bit of heat on each of those wires after they've got that resin on them, just enough to melt the resin. And then we'll go ahead and get some solder going on each of these wires. Now I don't have my helping hand set up right now. I should, but I don't. All right, so that one's tinned. You just want to get just enough solder on each of these wires that it takes on that silvery look to it. That white one got just a little bit extra, so I'm gonna kind of glaze some of that off there. Perfect. All right, so I don't know if you can see that. Those are well-tinned wires right there. Perfect. That's just what you want. So you can set that wire to the side now. And I'm gonna try my best to zoom this in for you. Again, I feel like this is such a neglected part of any LED strip projects is, you know, people are like, oh yeah, just solder this connector on, solder, you know, this to the pads. It's really not easy. It's so easy to mess it up. So just take it nice and slow. I'm gonna get a little bit of solder on your iron, and you just wanna get the tip of it just barely on that resin. Just sort of lightly tap it. Perfect. I've got the first bead just right. So you just wanna make the littlest tiny bead on each one of these pads. Second one. Third one, perfect. That one went really smooth. All right, so now that you've done that, next part, this is kind of a cheater way to do it and not the most environmentally friendly, but let me go ahead and zoom back out of here. Get your end cap, burn a little hole through it. Get that started, clean off your iron. I know the soldering nerds are gonna probably be really unhappy about that one, but look, I've been hand drilling these with this drill bit, and because again, I'm too lazy to go get my drill. Once I get excited about a project, I just kind of do it, and you know, if that means I have to get up and go grab another tool and I lose my flow, it's just not happening. So get a little hole started, bore it out a little bit, make sure your wire will fit through. Grab that same wire that you just tinned and pass those leads through that hole. Make sure that the main jacket of the wire will fit through. I'm just a little tight on that, but I think it's gonna fit with a little bit of coercion. It'll actually be better in the long run. That tension is being taken by this pass-through on this end cap rather than on the joint of the soldering. So, all right, that will work. So first, the one on my right, your right here, I'm gonna zoom back in. This one on the far right here is your positive, which I'm using red for that. So the middle is data, which I'm using white for that, and the negative, I'm using black. So make sure that these are all close enough in length that you can get them in their proper positions comfortably. I'm gonna go ahead and pull some more slack out of this just to make my life easier. So red, then white in the middle, and black on the left. I don't like doing all of them at once, so I'll start with just the red. So you wanna set that right on top of that little solder pad. And you don't wanna put too much heat on the strip itself. You can damage it, you can damage your LEDs. Don't want to do that. I think I'm going to need a little bit more solder at the ready. Just on the tip of the iron, I think. Get this going. All right, so red's done. White's done. And black is close. We need a little bit more solder on there. Just a little bit. All right. Here we go. Give it a light tug test. You don't want to yank on it, but that is on there nice and solid. All right. Perfect. So now that that's done, we can actually go ahead and assemble the tube. So what you want to do is you want to grab your plastic tube, and inside the tube there are these little wings, and you want to make sure the translucent side is facing up, and you want the aluminum extrusion to go underneath those little plastic tabs, and it will slide right back in the length of the tube. It'll actually slide in longer than the length of the tube, and you'll see that's that extra length goes into these end caps here. So we'll slide the end cap back on. Now it is important that your screw hole on the end cap lines back up with the screw hole on the aluminum extrusion. Perfect, the wire looks good inside there. Then you want to take that screw that you had from the beginning, and you want to put that back in the end cap into that extrusion. These are not magnetic screws, so be careful not to drop them. And these take more screwing down than you think. You might think you've done it all the way, and you realize you haven't quite. So get that slotted in there. Plastic tubes on. Grab your other end cap. Same thing on this side. Get this slotted in. Screw it down, and this will hold the tube together just like it did before. All right, so you want to just kind of tug on these, make sure there's no play. There's a little bit of play in the first one, so I'm going to go back and make sure it's screwed down all the way. Sometimes you have to like unscrew them and rescrew them. So when you put screws into like an aluminum piece, there's not really threads. When they first put them in the factory, they kind of force it in with a machine, and that makes the threads. Aluminum's a pretty soft metal, so when you unscrew them and try to put them back in, sometimes the threads don't grab quite right, and you're essentially cross-threading. Make sure that this is down nice and tight.
2,000 years later.
All right. Okay, cool. So we finally got that. So that is the LED tube assembled. It is mostly ready to go, but for my purposes and the way I use my controllers, I have aviation connectors that connect to my system. So this is a little 4-pin connector. Got a pack of them on Amazon for super cheap, and you have to solder these on in order to make your convenient connection. So there's a little screw on top. We'll take that out first, and then these slide apart. There we go. And then you've got this little piece here. So what I like to do with these is bend the little fins up to make them a little easier to work on when soldering, and make sure that you have everything where you want it to be. Now we're only using 3 of these pins instead of 4. It's nice to have a 4-pin in case you ever change platforms in the future. Same thing as before, strip the wire back, make sure you haven't nicked any of the core ones. We're not using green, so cut back the green and the rip cord. Pull those off to the side, trim them back. These are a little long again, cut those back, strip the ends. All right, that is that. So I'm going to go grab my controller just so I can verify that I have my pins in the right place, because they are mirrored. So give me 1 second, I'll be right back. All right, so looking at the controller and where I've soldered the internal connections, I can see where I've put the data wire, which is something I always have to verify, because one time I did a handful of them backwards and had to undo them, and now I'm adamant about checking it every single time. So these connectors are indexed. If you can see at the top, they have a notch. So that means this, from your perspective, this top right one is going to be our positive, our red, and then this top left one is going to be our negative, and then the bottom right one is going to be our data. So it'll be red, black, white. What you want to do first, you want to tin this the same way you tin the wires. So you want to put some resin on there for good binding here. Melt it down just a little bit. Okay. And then I've been using my wire strippers as like a little holder for this piece because it is kind of a pain to try and do it. One last thing, you can't forget, you have to put this metal collar piece on first on your wire before you do any soldering. Otherwise, you're going to have to desolder and then resolder, and that's no fun. Nobody likes doing that. So we'll tin our wires as well, just like we did before. A little bit of resin. Try and be a little bit quicker about it this time. A little bit of solder, just enough to get them coated. There we go, get this set back up. All right, and we'll see if we can knock this out fairly quickly. Wait, one more thing. You have to glob some solder onto each of these paddles as well, I forgot. And it takes a lot more than you might think to get it on these paddles. They're pretty good size, so you want to get a good little chunk on there. Get a nice little puddle going, and that's going to make our lives a lot easier. When I did the first round of soldering on the controller side of this project, it took me pretty much, an entire weekend of soldering and learning best practices and kind of doing and then undoing things. And fortunately now I can knock one of these out in about 30 minutes. And with these bigger connectors, they soak up a lot of heat, so you want to make sure you can really hold the iron on there and let that solder completely fuse with your wire. You don't want a bad connection. I've had bad connectors fail on me during shows, or in transport really is when that happens, and then you find out at the show, hey, this tube's not working, I wonder why. And it's not something you really want to try and fix on the floor of a warehouse an hour before your doors open for an event. So just trying to put the extra work in on the front end here for projects like this, it really helps a lot. So here's a good example of one that you might feel confident about. This white one, I'm not liking how it looks. It's probably fine, but I'm going to add just a little bit more just for some peace of mind. Oops. That's the kind of joint that would potentially come back to haunt you on show day. And as anybody in the industry knows, anything that can go wrong will go wrong eventually, so just be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. Perfect. All right. And so with that, our soldering is officially done. Clean off your iron, turn it off. Grab your connector from the lower portion of the wire. You've got a little screw on the top here to index with it. There's a little twist lock mechanism in these I just discovered. So get the tiniest screw you've ever seen and put that back in the top of your connector that holds it together. Set it down on top there. Real carefully screw that back in. There. First try, how about that? Awesome, there we go. And there you have it, everybody. This is a completed aviation connector that fits right into our controller ports here. And if you follow me on the next part of this video, we will get into the resolume portion where we map this. All right, so welcome everybody to the resolume portion of the LED tube programming. First thing you're going to want to do is go into your WLED controller. You can configure the IP to be static or DHCP. I prefer to do static whenever possible, just so it doesn't change. You can go back to it no matter which router you're using. Like, for example, I'm on my home network right now, but when I'm out at shows, I'm using a router that's built into my equipment rack, and it's on a totally different IP scheme. So you can set that up however you want. If it's staying at your house, you can run it differently. But go into your WLED controller, open up your LED preferences first, make sure your strip lengths are all configured. The maximum LED length or LED strip length that you can use in per universe is 170. So I've just gone ahead and set them to that, even though I know these strips are around 130. Set that and save it. Go into your sync interfaces and make sure that your ArtNet here is enabled and your start universe is 0. All right, once you go into Arena, you go into your fixture editor. Okay, you're going to need to make a fixture for each one of your LED strips. Now I've made a third one, so I need to make it 130 pixels long. You can change your distribution direction if you want to. Here, make sure you've got your fixtures in the fixture editor created, and you need to go to Preferences and DMX. Now, you will have one Lumiverse per strip because, like I said before, you can have 170 pixels per Lumiverse. So I'm hitting 130 on each strip. I'm going to go ahead and have to make a new one, Lumiverse 3. It's starting at 0 here, like we had configured in WLED. Then it goes to 1, then it goes to 2. Okay, so now you need to close that. Then we go into our advanced output. And here is where we will have our Lumiverses configured. So we'll add DMX Lumiverse, Lumiverse 3. And then here, this is one thing that I keep missing, is select your universe over here. Okay, and then scale it to fit your content. So something I've learned in doing this is the taller it is, the more data it will scrub from what you're playing in your composition. So that looks good there. All right, now we should be able to save it and close it and apply some content. Looks like we're not getting anything from that strip. Let's figure out why. No outputs. I remember. Okay. So we go into our Lumiverse here, make sure we've got our target IP. That's Lumiverse 2. Yep, here it is. So we need to go to our target IP and make sure we select the IP of our WLED controller and save and close. Still didn't take care of it. Should be. It's getting data. is. It's got it for some reason. There it is. For some reason that went up to universe 3. See, I mess it up every time. But as you can see, each of the LED tubes is pulling data from the screen in the area that it is mapped, and then converting that to pixel data. So I can see though that this one is backwards. So we'll go back to output, this one, and we will flip it. And then that will fix the directionality of it. So that should be a lot more accurate now. So yeah, that is the gist of it. So if you're looking to upcycle some LED tubes, maybe step up your visual game a little bit, tie in your LEDs to resolume, it's not as hard as it may seem. It took me a little bit of trial and error, as you could see, but once you've got it down, it's really quite easy, and I think the impact that it has is just significant, and I could not be happier with this project. So I just want to say, if you've stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for being a part of this build video. I can't wait to share some new projects with you guys. If you have any ideas as far as the LEDs go, maybe another component of production that can be tied into this beautiful CRT video wall project, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your ideas. But thank you guys so much. I'm Dropwise, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.